Chapter 461, Approaching Omens 3. A dark hall. The surroundings were in complete disarray. Someone approached the figure in the shadows, who was barely containing their anger in front of the pulverized stone throne, and knelt on one knee in respect. He was a man with long hair and prominent red lips, wearing a pristine white uniform. The man could barely breathe due to the heavy aura filling the entire hall from his lord's anger. Eventually, after steadying his breath, the man spoke with a tense expression. "Lord Mok'Gon, all measures have been taken as you instructed." At these words, Mok'Gon stared at the man for a moment before waving his hand. As if by magic, the ominous aura heavily pressing down on the hall dissipated. Finding it much easier to breathe, the long-haired man quietly let out a sigh of relief. Then he cautiously began to speak. "However, there is one problem." "What is it?" "We've lost all our brothers in the Heaven and Earth Society. We need to retrieve and release what you personally sealed there, but to do so we'd need to send in new brothers." At that moment Mok'Gon cut him off. "Have you already forgotten?" "Pardon? We haven't lost everything." At these words the red-lipped man's eyes widened. Come to think of it, there was one card he had forgotten about. The single card they had kept in reserve for emergencies, even after mobilizing all their other resources. "From today on, young son, you too are a member of our family." "Yes, elder." "Ahem." "Yes, father." "Good. But father, who is that behind you?" "Behind the elder." No, father's legs. I could see part of a face, or rather just the eyes of a child peeking out. The child was so pretty that it was clearly a girl. "Is this child to be my little sister?" I couldn't help but smile a little. But then father forcefully pulled the girl out from behind him and said, "This child is your older brother." "Older brother? What does he mean?" No matter how I looked at it, it was clearly a girl. I couldn't understand why he was calling this child my older brother. And when father first came to find me, he had clearly said, "You have excellent qualities. I'd like you to become our family's eldest son." "And me become your son, sir?" "Yes." So, I was fortunate enough to be adopted into one of the most prestigious families in the association. But why is he telling me to call this girl my older brother? I thought the family had no male heirs, which is why they were accepting me. As I was trying to understand, the girl who had been shyly hiding behind father reluctantly approached me under his pressure and held out her hand, saying, "Let's get along from now on." I reluctantly took her hand and greeted her. "Nice to meet you, older brother." Perhaps our relationship was already skewed from that moment. 5 years passed since then. During this time I learned many things. Originally, I was destined to be accepted as the eldest son, as father had said. However, due to the last wishes of the late madam, that damned brat is playing the role of the older brother with that ridiculous appearance. A mere girl has stolen my position. But I couldn't express these complaints. No matter how absurd this was, that girl truly carried the family's bloodline, while I, despite being brought in to continue the lineage, was merely an adopted son. There was only one thing I could do. Prove that I was far superior to this girl in terms of qualifications. However, excellent. The one receiving praise from father was not me but that girl. I thought, how great could a mere girl's qualifications be? But she was unbelievably outstanding. Even though I had been accepted for my excellent qualities, this was a monster. She was so clever that the saying, "Hear one, understand 10" wasn't an exaggeration. When taught one thing, she understood 10. Because of this, at some point, father began to habitually say this while looking back and forth between me and the girl in the training ground. What a pity. Such a shame. Damn it. What's a pity? That the qualities of the adopted son they brought in are lower than this girl's? Or is it regret that this girl with such outstanding qualities isn't a son? Whatever it was, I was filled with rage. But I never showed it. I'm just an adopted son, so to survive here, I must never do anything to make myself disliked. 2 more years passed. Despite my blood, sweat, and tears, the gap in our qualities still hadn't narrowed. At this rate, there were even whispers that this girl might receive the title of the most outstanding 5 peaks within the association in just a few years. Damn it. I don't understand. I train longer than that brat, even cutting back on sleep to circulate my chi, so why can't I catch up? Could it be that father is paying more attention to her? I knew he wasn't that kind of person, but I couldn't help but suspect it. Sigh. Could they really be planning to give the successor position to this girl who can't even continue the family line? If that's the case, I might really want to kill her. While I was anxious day by day, this girl wasn't. As I turned my head at the touch on my shoulder, a finger poked my cheek. It was that wretched girl. Annoyingly playful, she asked with a big grin. Got you again. What are you doing? What would I be doing? You were staring so intently at my room, I thought you might be angry with me or something. Angry? Am I wrong? How could that be? I'm your right-hand man, aren't I? I'll support you in maintaining the family. So don't worry. At my words, the girl's expression became subtle. Could it be that she doesn't trust me? As I wondered this, the girl suddenly hugged me tightly and said with a smile. That's right. My little brother. Thank you. This hateful wench. My little brother? Is she showing off just because she was born about 3 years earlier? The more she does this, the more I hate this girl. To the point where I really want to kill her. A few days passed like this. Suddenly Father called us. With an unusually solemn face, Father said, both of you go to the Corpse Blood Valley. What? I was dumbfounded at these words. Isn't the Corpse Blood Valley a place where only those from minor sects or those seeking fame go at the risk of their lives? Why is he telling us to go to such a place? It's for the long-cherished wish of our association. The descendants of the other 5 kings have all agreed to participate, so you too should also take the lead and join. Damn it. I thought that by becoming an adopted son of the family, I wouldn't have to go to the Corpse Blood Valley. But now they're telling everyone to go there? Isn't this too much? But the girl calmly replied, I'll keep that in mind. And as soon as we left Father's study, she turned to me with a bright smile and said, Don't worry, little brother. I'll protect you. At her words, I was once again filled with rage. I could barely stand the thought of going there, and yet this girl acts nonchalant and even tries to encourage me? Damn it. Who are you to make me feel so pathetic? You really make me feel so small. In the end, I was sent to the Corpse Blood Valley at the mere age of 15. The first challenge was the iron ball competition. Huff huff. Brother. Take it. But isn't this what you found? You go on ahead. I can find another one quickly. Brother. Damn brat. Does she think I can't even pass this kind of test, so she's giving me what she found? How little must she think of me to do something like this? I sincerely wished for this girl to die. But in the end, not only did she find another iron ball as she said, but she also beat down everyone who came at her and even obtained a prize. The second challenge was the flag battle. I deliberately avoided being in the same team as her. I didn't want to be with someone who made me feel so pathetic while calling me little brother, and such. While searching for flags, I was unexpectedly ambushed by a group from minor sects. If we get rid of you, passing the next test will be easy. I prided myself on being unbeatable among my peers, but I couldn't handle a combined attack from 6 people. Each of them wasn't much individually, but why did I have to suffer like this at the hands of such people? In the end, I fled to save my life while fighting them. Then, while precariously using Qigong on a cliff, I fell into the ravine below. Is this better than dying at the hands of such people? But I didn't die. Luckily, I fell into a pool of water and survived. But something felt strange. Although the cliff ravine was dark, I wasn't scared of such things, yet my whole body was trembling with goosebumps. As I looked around, I was shocked. What is this? There were countless bones scattered about, and judging by the clothes they wore, they seemed to be from students who had entered the Corpse Blood Valley. What on earth is this place? Seized by an ominous feeling due to the countless bone fragments, I fearfully tried to quickly climb back up the cliff. But I fell back down due to some unknown force. And as I was being dragged by something, that something was a strange person with a terribly burned face and no eyes. Terrified, I tried my best to escape, but it was useless. This strange person was a monster. It's impressive that you survived, but unfortunately you've seen this place, so I'll have to kill you. Kek. You're going to kill me just for seeing this? Feels unfair somehow. If I had known I would die so meaninglessly like this, I should have just done what I wanted. It's so frustrating to die without accomplishing anything, always being cautious about being an adopted son. If I had killed that girl when I had the chance, would it have been a little better? Just then a voice was heard from somewhere. Wait. What? How? At the voice's command, the burned being loosened its grip on my throat. Then I saw someone approaching. Flinch. Surprisingly, it was a being with an eye on its forehead. This bizarre being looked at me with an evil smile and said, You have an interesting desire. This was the turning point of my fate and my first encounter with him. Thanks to him, I obtained everything I wanted. Not only the position of the family's successor but also the title of one of the 5 tigers, the highest 5 peaks in the association. It seemed like everything would continue to go as I wished. I thought that as long as I followed him who protected me, everything would go according to plan. However, now a crisis has come to that. Although it was just an avatar, even with his intervention, everything has gone awry. There are no more allies left in here. It could be said to be the worst situation as all of his subordinates who existed within the association have been killed off. What should I do about this? As he said, I didn't participate in the war under the pretext of closed-door training. But because of that, I've become suspicious. Even if my father understood, the Shadow Clan was demanding an investigation because I didn't respond to the society leader's summons. I was pondering how to handle this situation. Then my eyes caught sight of insects swarming under a tree. Thinking, could it be? I approached the spot, and the corners of my mouth twitched before curling up into a sinister smile. As expected, he had made all the arrangements. Around the hour of the ox, 1 to 3 a.m., in the dark dawn, a group was stealthily moving towards the location of the hidden vault near the Corpse Blood Valley. There were about 20 masked individuals. They were all experts, a small elite force whose footsteps were barely audible. After the internal conflict of the Heaven and Earth Society, they were short on manpower, so the Corpse Blood Valley Master and the remaining forces had all entered the inner city, making it easy for this group to move. Sisisuk. The group reached the cliff peak in front of the hidden vault and stopped there. The imposing bamboo-hatted figure at the lead spoke in a low voice to the person beside him. Are you sure that's what he promised? Didn't you see his power yourself, father? He will protect us. I understand. 5 of you stay here to guard, the rest follow me. Pat. With a hand gesture, he took the lead and climbed the cliff. Despite his imposing physique, he nimbly scaled the cliff and entered the hidden vault. Once inside, he ordered 10 people to guard the entrance and its vicinity, then climbed to the 3rd floor of the vault. He had been told that it would be in a small cave in the corner of the 3rd floor. They soon discovered a small cave marked with a red line. It's there. They entered the small cave marked with a red line and began searching for it. However, after searching for a while, they noticed something strange. They were told it would be here, so why wasn't it? Puzzled, the imposing bamboo-hatted figure asked the person next to him. Wasn't it supposed to be here? The bamboo-hatted person beside him also seemed confused, tilting his head as he replied. This can't be right. He clearly said it would be here. Why would it be there? Flinch. At that moment, they all turned their heads towards a voice coming from outside the small cave. But there was nothing visible there. The bamboo-hatted figure slightly lifted his hat, narrowing his eyes as he scanned the surroundings. If someone were there, it would be impossible for them to deceive his sense of chi, being one of the 5 kings and 8 stars of the association. But something felt off. What is this? There was clearly nothing visible, yet he sensed a strange energy stimulating his chi sense. Unable to find the right words to describe it, he felt goosebumps rising. It was similar to ghostly energy. Just then, the person next to the bamboo-hatted figure suddenly showed a bewildered expression. What's wrong? Despite his question, the person next to the bamboo-hatted figure even took a step back. Young-sun. The bamboo-hatted figure called out the name of the person beside him and grabbed his shoulder. Young-sun then spoke with trembling eyes. How are you here? You. What on earth is he talking about? While the bamboo-hatted figure and others were puzzled, only Young-sun's eyes clearly saw someone's figure. That someone was a young girl with half of her hair turned white, her entire body wrapped in chains. Gyu Soha. Chapter 462, Karma. 1. It was invisible to everyone else's eyes. While the bamboo-hatted figure and others were puzzled, only Young-sun's eyes clearly saw someone's figure. That someone was a young girl with half of her hair turned white, her entire body wrapped in chains. Gyu Soha. She is a spirit servant belonging to Mokjayongun, who has reached blue spirit rank. How did she, who always refers to herself as this young master, or as a man, arrive here before them? And why is she in the state of a vengeful spirit instead of possessing someone? This was due to an instruction from Mok Jaeongun. Just a few hours earlier around sunset, Gyu Soha, possessing the body of Seo Hyein, the leader of the Four Peaks faction under Jang Nung-ik, the second disciple of the society leader, was leading a force of hundreds of experts and escorting Go Chan, who was possessed by Y So-yun, back to the society. They would have arrived sooner, but their return was delayed due to several encounters with secret society's trackers and having to avoid them. However, they were now only a few hours away from arriving. At that moment, Mok Jaeongun's thoughts were transmitted into her mind. Gyu Soha. Where are you now? Master. Are you at the society? No. We had to take a detour because they were following us, so it took some time. I see. Then it would be difficult. Pardon? They are targeting the assassin king of the sea sealed in the hidden vault of the Corpse Blood Valley. The wooden box. Master. We're not far now. We should arrive at the association in less than half a day. So I can retrieve the wooden box. No, this is urgent. Leave it to Ma Sung. You focus on your current mission. Master? Master. No matter how much she called, Mok Jaeongun didn't respond. Gyu Soha was feeling dejected when, coincidentally as they approached the society, they found another force waiting for them. It was none other than the force led by Lee Jiom, the master of the Corpse Blood Valley. Oh, is that Seo Hyein, leader of the Four Peaks faction? Our lord sent us. From now on I will command the escort team. The meticulous Mok Jaeongun had sent Lee Jiom in advance as a precaution. Thanks to their appearance, she thought it was fortunate and left things to Lee Jiom, then separated from the body and returned first in her vengeful spirit state. Hao. Gyu Young-sun, one of the 5 tigers, the highest-ranked 5 peaks of the Heaven and Earth Society, and the grand leader of the Spear Demon Group. He couldn't hide his bewilderment at the sight of Gyu Soha flickering before his eyes. The memory from that time was still vivid, as if it had happened just yesterday. He was rejoicing in his hidden talent awakening after being chosen by him, when he heard someone's voice calling for him from somewhere. Pingsun, Pingsun, where are you? Answer if you're alive. It was that girl's voice. Could she have come down to this ravine to look for him? Just as he was starting to feel strange, his voice echoed in his ears. Your chance has come. With that, the subtle emotion that had momentarily gripped Young-sun disappeared, and his heart filled with murderous intent. Seized by such intense killing intent, he secretly approached Gyu Soha from behind and struck the back of her head with a sharp rock. Ak. Gyu Soha turned her head, gasping for breath. She was looking at him with eyes filled with both shock and disappointment. How? Don't look at me with those eyes. This is all your fault. Ak. Young-sun brought the rock down on her face as she glared at him. Seeing her suffer with her eyes sunken in, Young-sun's mouth stretched into a wide grin. Feeling her pain brought him such joy that he felt ecstatic. Stop. You damn brat. What do you mean stop? Everything will be solved if you just die. Every time you acted superior, pretending to sympathize while having everything. I didn't. You were just born before me, that's all. With those words, Young-sun frantically brought the rock down on her face. At first she screamed in pain, but by the time her face was almost completely crushed, she could no longer make any sound. Finally, the damn girl was dead. Even after confirming that Gyu Soha had breathed her last, he continued to strike her face, unable to quell his anger. But now what was happening? Summel. The figure flickering before his eyes now, with half-white hair and body wrapped in chains, was undoubtedly Gyu Soha. Although the whitened hair and chains looked bizarre, what bewildered Young-sun more was seeing the dead girl flickering before his eyes. What on earth is this? This chilling, hair-raising, ghostly energy that gave him goosebumps. Could she have become a vengeful ghost after death? As he unconsciously took a step back, his father, the Shadow Spear King Gyu Jongsin, grabbed his shoulder and asked, "What's wrong? Can't you see it?" "See what? What are you talking about? What?" As he questioned back, even the family retainers beside them were showing reactions as if they couldn't understand what was happening. "Young master. What on earth is wrong with you? Could it be that they can't see that thing in front of them? That Gyu Soha thing is glaring at him as if it's going to kill him and they can't see it?" Then his father, the Shadow Spear King Gyu Jongsin, pointed to where the ghostly energy was felt and asked, "Do you mean over there? What exactly do you see?" That. Young-sun couldn't bring himself to answer. How could he say that Gyu Soha, whom he had killed with his own hands, was visible right in front of him? Hugh. Seemingly deciding this wouldn't do, the Shadow Spear King Gyu Jongsin approached where the ghostly energy was felt and aimed his personal weapon, the famous spear Hanwei, which he wore on his back. Then, concentrating true chi at the spear tip and imbuing it with sword energy, he thrust it forward. At the moment he thrust the spear, Gyu Soha leaped backward, avoiding the attack. She had distanced herself because even a vengeful spirit in ethereal form could be somewhat harmed by the chi of an outstanding internal martial arts master. However, because of this, she dodged. Young-sun, who had been momentarily gripped by fear thinking it was a vengeful ghost, came to his senses. Why would a dead vengeful ghost dodge an attack? Could it be that this isn't what I think it is? Young-sun reached for the spear on his back. Although he didn't know how it had appeared before him again, it was clear that it had appeared with malice towards him. The fortunate thing was that no one else could see it. Whether it's a vengeful ghost or whatever, I need to deal with it. His father, the Shadow Spear King Gyu Jongsin, only knew that Gyu Soha had died in an unfortunate accident during the Corpse Blood Valley test. Thanks to that, he had naturally been able to become the young master. He didn't know why such a thing had appeared now, but he couldn't let it become an unnecessary disturbance. He had been momentarily shocked and confused, thinking the dead girl had appeared, but he was no longer his former self. Now he was one of the 5 tigers, the highest-ranked 5 peaks, and a supreme expert who had reached the pinnacle stage of the transcendent realm, gazing beyond the wall. Moreover, if he used the technique that he had passed down, he could exert even greater power. Because of this, none of the 5 tigers could match him. Judging by that youthful appearance, she doesn't seem any different from before, but are you trying to take revenge on me now? Humph. If physical attacks work, I'll kill you again. Just as Young-sun was about to launch himself towards Gyu Soha extended her palm towards him and muttered incomprehensible words. Ghost Intent Domain. Chain Immortal Prison. Pat. What's this? At that moment, Papapapat. Suddenly, chains began to burst out and surge up from the perfectly normal floor. Young-sun, who had been about to attack Gyu Soha, was startled by the chains surging up from the floor and used a movement technique to avoid them. Nevertheless, the surging chains, as if alive, rushed towards him. In response, Young-sun unleashed a powerful spear technique to block the chains. Has this damn girl learned some kind of sorcery? He couldn't understand what was happening. As he continued to block the chains, Young-sun, feeling a sense of crisis from the continuously advancing chains, hurriedly shouted, "Father! Please help!" At that moment Young-sun's pupils shook. The figures of his father and the 3 retainers were nowhere to be seen. As he wondered where they had disappeared to, he saw chains, incomparably more numerous than before, rushing towards him like hundreds of snakes swarming in. Damn it! There were so many that he was at a loss for how to block them all. However, Young-sun's worry didn't last long. This was because, while watching the oncoming chains, he became certain of one thing. There was no way such a large quantity of chains could exist in the hidden vault of the Corpse Blood Valley. Which meant this must surely be an illusion. You're trying to deceive my eyes, but do you think I'll fall for it so easily? Young-sun fixed the shaft of his spear to the ground and closed his eyes. Then he concentrated on his sense of chi. This is fake. Fake. It's merely deceiving his sight and other 5 senses. If it's just an illusion, it absolutely cannot harm him. Yes, absolutely. He felt numerous chains wrapping around his body. At this, Young-sun circulated his true chi throughout his body while repeating to himself. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. If I concentrate. But then, as hundreds of chains, not just one, wrapped around his body and tightened, he couldn't help but scream in pain. Coo up. What on earth is this? He had closed his eyes and tried to convince himself that nothing was there. But the sensation of chains constricting his body felt too real. Because of this, Young-sun finally unleashed his anti-shock energy throughout his body, trying somehow to shake off the chains wrapping around him. However, kayak. The chains tightened even more strongly, making him feel like his body was about to burst. He had definitely raised his power to the 10-star level, so how could mere illusory chains have an even stronger constricting force? Then a voice reached his ears. Does this look like an illusion to you? Huh. Surprised, Young-sun tilted his head back and shouted. Why, what exactly are you? Why do you have that girl's appearance? That girl. Judging by your tone, I can tell how you thought of me. You. Young-sun's expression distorted. This familiar intonation and way of speaking. Even though more than 15 years had passed, it was impossible for it to be erased from his mind. It can't be. You're dead. Yet here I am in front of you. With those words, Gyu So-ha made a gesture of slightly clenching her hand. At that, the chains wrapping around Young-sun tightened even more. Kek kek. The pressure was so strong that Young-sun's face trembled and blood spurted from his mouth. Despite his suffering appearance, Gyu So-ha showed no sign of satisfaction. This was because she hadn't yet bestowed upon him the proper pain. To be in such pain from just this much. How pathetic. You bitch. Gyu So-ha is dead. Even in his pain, he tried his best not to make any verbal mistakes, thinking his father and the retainers might be watching. But then, yes, I died. So I'm here to let you taste the pain I experienced after death. What? You coveted what I had, right? Then you should share the pain too. As Gyu So-ha snapped her fingers, everything around them darkened. Then suddenly the surroundings changed. It had clearly been the hidden vault, but now it had transformed into the bottom of a cliff ravine. The moment he saw this place, Young-sun's pupils shook violently. This is that place. The bottom of the cliff ravine in the Corpse Blood Valley. The place he called Solitude. And also the place where he had killed Gyu So-ha. What on earth is going on? What the hell did you do? How did you bring me to this place? Young-sun's shout echoed all around. What? Where did you go? Gyu So-ha, who had been right beside him until just a moment ago, was nowhere to be seen. Where on earth did she disappear to? As he wondered about this, Summel. At that moment something unbelievable happened. Bizarre things with terrifying forms began to appear before his eyes from all directions. These things, with not a single normal aspect to them, were literally vengeful spirits, vengeful ghosts. Even though he had reached the transcendent realm, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine at the sight of these terrible things swarming towards him. Startled by the appearance of these approaching beings, he tried to undo the chains, but Kuhu. The chains constricting his body didn't budge an inch. In the midst of this, unfortunately, as he struggled to move, he ended up falling backwards. Having fallen, he frantically tried to somehow undo the chains. But by then the vengeful spirits had reached where he was. Hook. The vengeful spirits that had reached him began to frantically cling to him and burrow into his exposed parts. Kwaduk. Kwajik. Ujiak. Kaya. Let go. Don't bite. You whack. Young-sun frantically turned his face and twisted his body, trying to shake them off. But the more he did so, let us eat you. Die. Why should we be here? Save us. Give us your body. Just die already. They clung to him even more frantically. As they bit his face and burrowed into his flesh, more than the physical pain, extreme emotions of terror and despair flooded his mind, tormenting him. Kaya. The torment was so severe that he felt he might go mad. Could he really die like this? As he thought this, suddenly he saw Gyu So-ha watching him with a chilling smile on her face. She was genuinely happy at his suffering. You really are trying to take revenge on me? How dare you do this to me? Reaching the extreme of agony and rage, he finally couldn't hold back anymore and unleashed the secret technique he had been hiding. It was a technique called the exploding acupoint skill that he had taught him, which momentarily increased all his power exponentially at the cost of depleting his vital energy. Pakachakachacha. His power instantly surged to more than double, causing the massive chains that hadn't budged an inch to shatter into pieces. Along with this, the vengeful spirits that had been biting and clinging to him were also flung away. Pat. Young-sun then launched himself and grabbed Gyu So-ha. He roughly grasped her neck with both hands and threw her to the ground. You wench. How dare you try to take revenge on me? Kek. Stop. Kuhahaha. Young-sun burst into maniacal laughter as he watched Gyu So-ha suffering. He had thought she was a vengeful spirit, but it seems that wasn't the case. After all, a dead person wouldn't suffer from being choked. Young-sun tightened his grip on Gyu So-ha's neck even more, sneering with a face twisted by madness. I don't know how you survived with your face crushed, but Soha, you're really stupid. Kek kek. Gyu Soha's face gradually turned pale as she struggled for breath. Watching her dying appearance, Yongsun scoffed and said, "Why are you frustrated? You tried so hard to get revenge, but you couldn't even do that properly, and now you're about to die by my hands again." No sooner had those words left his mouth. Gyu Soha, who had been suffering with a dying face, suddenly smiled. She's smiling? At that moment, he felt something cold and sharp against his neck. It was a spear blade. This is. And it wasn't just any spear blade, but Han Weifun, the famous spear that was his father Shadow Spear King Gyu Jongsun's personal weapon. Startled, he tried to lift his head, but his father's voice, filled with killing intent, shook his heart. Just now. Repeat what you said. Chapter 463, Karma. 2. Shadow Spear King Gyu Jongsun and his 3 retainers, who had served him for a long time, frowned at the strange scene unfolding before their eyes. This was because Gyu Yongsun, the family's heir, was behaving strangely all by himself. He seemed to be attacking someone invisible, then suddenly writhed in pain as if his body was being constricted by something. He even coughed up blood. As they tried to help him, "You damn girl. Gyu Soha is dead." They stopped at Yongsun's unexpected words. What on earth was he saying? Why was this child suddenly mentioning the dead Soha? Family head. The young master is still. Wait. Leave him be for a moment. At the family head's order, they left Yongsun alone for a while. But what followed was even more outrageous. Though they couldn't see anyone, Yongsun seemed to be conversing with someone. Later, he unleashed a bizarre evil technique, then lunged at something invisible, making a strangling gesture before uttering shocking words. "You wench. How dare you try to take revenge on me?" "Revenge? Stop. Kuhahaha." A laugh filled with madness. The family head was left speechless at this side of Yongsun he had never seen before. Yongsun's face was the very embodiment of evil. He had always shown a gentle demeanor, even maintaining his dignity after becoming the heir. How had he hidden such a side? As he wondered about this, "I don't know how you survived with your face crushed, but Soha, you're really stupid." At these words, the retainers were at a loss, shocked. They had just heard something terrible that they shouldn't have known. What on earth was going on? The confused retainers looked at the family head, but the family head's gaze towards Yongsun was no longer that of a father looking at his child. Unaware of this, Yongsun continued to speak provocatively, completely disregarding his surroundings. "Why are you frustrated? You tried so hard to get revenge, but you couldn't even do that properly, and now you're about to die by my hands again." Gyu Jongsun could no longer just watch Yongsun. Gyu Jongsun aimed his personal weapon, the famous spear Hanwei, at Yongsun's neck and asked, "Just now. Repeat what you said." At these words, Yongsun's expression, which had been revealing his madness without regard for anyone until just a moment ago, froze. Yongsun slowly raised his head, scanned his surroundings and couldn't hide his bewilderment. Father. Something. Did you kill Soha?" He should have denied it immediately, but meeting the eyes of his adoptive father Gyu Jongsun, whose face was calm but eyes burned with anger, Yongsun was momentarily at a loss for words. Yongsun was at a complete loss for how to navigate this situation. He was supposed to secure that under his orders and then escape from the Heaven and Earth Society, but he didn't know how to explain this. Time was running out, and even if he tried to persuade them, would it work? After all, he had said those things. After considering numerous options in a split second, Yongsun finally spoke. "Father, this is a trap." "A trap? I don't know what kind of trick this is, but I seem to have fallen under some sort of evil spell. That's why I might have said things that could be misunderstood, but it's absolutely not true. You know, don't you? How much I cared for my elder sister. Didn't you say you didn't know how your elder sister died?" "What? It was a matter of that child's honor, and I didn't tell you because I was worried you'd be shocked. So how do you know about it?" Gyu Jongsun was one of the 5 kings of the Heaven and Earth Society. Because of this, he had turned the Corpse Blood Valley and the Primal Killing Pavilion upside down to find out how his daughter Gyu Soha had died. However, because she had been killed so horribly, he had kept silent about it to Yongsun. Damn it. Young-sun realized in an instant. No matter what he said, there was no way to explain this. There was only one option left. I need to escape. Fortunately, he was still in the state of using the exploding acupoint skill that he had taught him, so at this moment, even the Shadow Spear King Gyujongsan wouldn't be able to easily. At that moment, Shadow Spear King Gyujongsan's famous spear Hanwei pierced through his neck. Young-sun's eyes widened, his mouth gaped open, and then his head drooped. Even though his power had more than doubled due to the exploding acupoint skill, he was merely an expert who had reached the peak of the transcendent realm, while Shadow Spear King Gyujongsan was one of the 8 stars called the highest experts in the martial world and had reached the realm of transformation. There was no way to escape from such a person when his neck was already targeted. As Gyujongsan glared at Young-sun, who had just breathed his last, a single tear fell from one of his eyes. Ah, Soha. Gyujongsan's heart ached terribly. He was overwhelmed with sadness, remembering his only daughter who had died in agony, her face crushed by none other than her adopted brother. As he shed tears, a strange thing happened before his eyes. Right in front of him, the dead Gyu Soha was looking at him with a loving expression. You, father. His dead daughter called out to him. If not for his wife's last wish, he would have wanted to raise her as his daughter. He wanted to raise her more beautifully than anyone else. But he couldn't. He even sent her to the corpse blood valley, which he didn't want to, leading to her death. Guilt and longing simultaneously enveloped his heart. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. As a father, I only did terrible things. Gyu Soha shook her head at him, who was choked with anguish. Then she smiled brightly. It was as if she was saying she was fine. For a moment, Gyujongsan's lips trembled, his eyes reddened, and with a flushed face he reached out towards his daughter. But at that moment, Gyu Soha's body brightened, and then scattered like hundreds of fireflies flying away. Soha. Soha. Gyujongsan waved his hands towards the scattering lights and then broke down in tears. He had hoped she would resent him, but how could she leave with such a bright smile? Soha. My one and only child. Family head. The 3 retainers looked with pity at the family head, who was overcome with sorrow and weeping. But then, suddenly the head of Young-sun, who had just died, exploded. The retainers couldn't hide their bewilderment at this sight. Although his neck had been pierced, it didn't seem like the family head had specifically sent true chi to his head. What on earth was happening? In a dark hall, Mok Gon, the leader of secret society hidden in the shadows, shook his head as if disappointed. The Heaven and Earth Society was the first place he had intended to unleash to inflict pain on him. The 6 demons, the pinnacle of Imi Manjiang and infinitely close to divine beasts, are each a disaster and calamity in themselves. But it seemed things hadn't gone as planned. Lord Mok Gon, the man with long hair and red lips, cautiously called out, sensing his discomfort. Just moments ago he had been anticipating that a catastrophe would soon unfold at the Heaven and Earth Society. Something seemed to have gone wrong. Then Mok Gon waved his hand and said, "We'll give up on the assassin king of the sea." What? It doesn't matter. The restraining badger was just the vanguard anyway. Now that even that has fallen into my hands, the tide has completely turned. The red-lipped man knew well what Mok Gon meant. How many years had Mok Gon spent trying to obtain that? Although it had been sealed for a long time, it was once considered the strongest Imi Manjiang, unrivaled in demonic power among the 6 demons and comparable to the monstrous monkey that had transcended the natural order. Pang! Someone was flying through the air at an incredible speed. The one using the sky-traversing void technique. Cutting through the air so fast it was difficult to perceive with the naked eye, was none other than Mok Jiangun. Mok Jiangun, who had already awakened to the supreme sword, was traveling at a speed that far surpassed the level of ordinary lightness skill. Flinch. As he flew so quickly, Mok Jiangun suddenly furrowed his brow. This was because, just now this sensation was unmistakable. One of the connections linked to him had been severed. Mok Jiangun had felt a similar sensation when he lost the spirit servant Wei Mengqiong. This was completely different from when Chong Ryong's connection was severed. Could it be? Had one of the spirit servants been annihilated? But it was quite different from that sensation, as there was almost no backlash that usually came with a severed connection. What could this be? As he was wondering, Someone's thoughts were transmitted into Mok Jaeongun's mind. Master. The voice belonged to none other than the spirit servant Ma Sung. Ma Sung. The wooden box has been safely retrieved, and as you said, they came for it. So what happened? The remaining pawns have been dealt with. However, Yu Soha resolved her grudge in the process. The severed connection wasn't due to annihilation? Then does it mean she attained enlightenment after resolving her grudge? This was a situation he had never experienced before, even though he had spirit servants. Mok Jaeongun's eyes took on a subtle look as he learned this. Then Chong Ryong's voice echoed in his ear. What's wrong? Pardon? What happened to make you have such an expression? Chong Ryong had become able to read Mok Jaeongun's state of mind to some extent, even from subtle changes in his expression. Mok Jaeongun didn't answer her question. This was because an unexpected new conflict had arisen in his mind. The place he was heading to now was where Mok Gon's main body was located. Mortal? As expected, Secret Society's target was the 6 demons, who could be considered the pinnacle of spirit beasts. Fortunately, they had prevented the Assassin King of the Sea sealed in the main hall of the Heaven and Earth Society, which could be considered their base, from being unsealed, but if Jin Yiren's information was correct, there were still 3 more. However, these 6 demons were scattered in the northern, southwestern, and eastern parts of the Central Plains, so it was practically impossible, beyond just being rushed, to stop them in time. Therefore, the most ideal method Mok Jaeongun could take was only one. Strike the head. Mok Gon, the leader of Secret Society and the source of everything. If he could just kill him, the mastermind and root cause, all of this might naturally be resolved, including his and Chong Ryong's revenge. But a new worry had arisen. What if Mok Gon's main body dies and Chong Ryong's deep grudge, accumulated over 100 years, is resolved? Would she also unexpectedly attain enlightenment like Yu Soha? For Mok Jaeongun, who had never considered this aspect before, his mind couldn't help but become complicated. It might be better, even just in case, to first settle Chong Ryong into Wai So-yun, who held her soul so she could reincarnate, rather than targeting Mok Gon's main body first as he had planned to do. However, Mok Jaeongun's fist clenched. If he didn't deal with Mok Gon now that he knew the location of his main body, it might lead to the catastrophic outcome that he desired. He was about to reach the location where he was, and he needed to make a decision. Should he prioritize reviving Chong Ryong? Or should he prioritize eliminating him first? As he was conflicted like this, flinch. Oh no. Mok Jaeongun's gaze suddenly turned downward. At that moment, a blindingly intense light surged up from the ground, enveloping him without giving him a chance to avoid it. Chapter 464. The Beginning of a Calamity. 1. In a dark forest, a campfire burned. Jin Yiren, who had been sitting in front of it eating jerky to stave off hunger, looked up at the night sky. For some unknown reason, at some point the night sky had become cloudless and a chilling, ominous wind was blowing. She felt that all of this was not a good sign. Tatak. After looking at the night sky, she lowered her head and gazed at the sparking campfire. As she watched it, her mind drifted back to a few hours ago. A few hours earlier. At sunset in the bamboo forest that had been reduced to ruins. Mok Jaeongun, looking at the clues Jin Yiren had engraved on the ground, spoke. It's impossible to stop everything he has prepared for so long. Puzzled by Mok Jaeongun's unexpected conclusion, she asked. Are you saying you're giving up? No. I can't do that. That's a relief. If you, young Master Mok, said you were giving up, all the sacrifices so far would have been in vain. Since we don't know where Mok Gon is, shouldn't our priority be to stop those beings called the 6 demons first? The 6 leaders considered the pinnacle even among the Imi Manjiang. They were called the 6 demons. She thought they should prioritize stopping them since each one was said to be a calamity and disaster in itself. However, Mok Jaeongun shook his head at her words. What? Then what do you plan to do? It's impossible to stop all of them due to their locations. Didn't you say you weren't giving up? I'll strike at Mok Gon's main body. What? But Mok Gon's main body? I figured out where his main body is through the connection of his thoughts. Jin Yiren couldn't hide her surprise at these words. She knew that Mok Jaeongun was deeply versed in magic, but had he reached the point where he could even pinpoint someone's location through their thoughts? Just then, someone interjected into their conversation. Incarnate. I'll go with you. It was none other than Chun Chu, the highest-ranking member of secret society. Her eyes, which had been endlessly weeping while embracing Ghost Blade, were now filled with extreme killing intent. It was anger towards Mok Gon, who had ultimately killed her father. For my father's sake, I must cut off his head. Are you saying you're defecting? Defection. It literally meant changing from where one originally belonged. At Mok Jaeungun's question, she snorted and replied, "If that's what you were hoping for, I'm sorry, but I have no desire to belong to anyone anymore. I'm sick of being manipulated by others. So let's just call it a temporary alliance." Alliance. Do as you please. Mok Jaeungun accepted this, seemingly unconcerned. After all, she was closer to an Imi Manjiang than a human, and not someone who would move according to his will. It was appropriate to cooperate just for the purpose at hand. If you found out where that bastard is, I'll go with you. Together. Why? Do you think I'll be a hindrance? At her words, Mok Jaeungun shrugged. Her power, as the highest-ranking member of secret society, was practically on par with the Seven Heavens, considered the pinnacle of the current martial world, and in some sense she could exert even greater power because she wasn't human. Then Jin Yuren also stepped forward and said, "I'll help too." Mok Gon, the one who had caused a great calamity, destroyed Muzang Castle, and even driven her only father to his death. And his organization Secret Society. She too could never forgive them. But then, well, you won't be coming with us. What did you say? Exactly what I said. At Mok Jaeungun's words, Jin Yuren argued, unable to understand. You say it's okay for this woman, but why not me? I never said it was okay. What? You're free to follow, but I'm heading to where Mok Gon's main body is right now. If we don't hurry, we'll miss him. If that's the case, we could ride that giant bird you command. The beast Humwen will take them back to the Heaven and Earth Society. The place Mok Jaeungun pointed to was where his subordinates who had come with them were. Seop Chun and Mong Muyak were both seriously injured and in poor condition. Even though each of his followers who had come with him had reached the peak of the Transcendent Realm or even the Transformation Realm, Mok Jaeungun had concluded that they would be more of a hindrance in the upcoming battle, which could truly be the final confrontation. They also knew this, so they didn't insist on following their lord at the risk of their lives, not wanting to hold Mok Jaeungun back any further. Looking at them, she bit her lip hard before speaking. I understand what you're saying, young master. But when even one more hand could be helpful, how can you? Let me be clear. Jin Yuren, with your skills, you won't be of help. At Mok Jaeungun's words as cutting as a sword, she was momentarily at a loss for words. She had reached the profound realm beyond the wall, the same realm as the Seven Heavens, who could be considered the pinnacle of the current martial world. To say that someone like her wouldn't be of help? It was an assessment that hurt her pride terribly, but she couldn't say anything. This was because the memory of her being unable to even face Mok Gon's avatar and hindering her allies several times struck at her core. Hadn't she even lost Cheol Su Ryan because of this? Hook. As she clenched her fist so tightly that her nails dug into her palm and drew blood, Mok Jaeungun spoke coldly. I understand your desire for revenge, but you would only be a hindrance. If you truly want to be of help, go to the evil alliance in the north and prepare for the crisis that will come from the north of Shaanxi province. The north of Shaanxi province, Datong. That was where there might be a clue about one of the 6 demons. Tatik. As she recalled the events from a few hours ago while staring at the campfire, she bit her lip hard, still feeling frustrated. She wanted to take revenge with her own hands, but she had to leave it to others. Was she really that weak? Ha. Well, to be precise, the enemy was too strong. If she didn't admit this, it would be nothing more than self-consolation. All she could do was sigh. She took out the secret manual from her bosom. Heavenly Concealed Luminous Star Sword Art. If she had discovered and learned this earlier, would things have been different? It was a secret manual left by her ancestors as a contingency. It seemed to be a manual with power beyond the current luminous star sword art, but it was impossible to master it in a short time. In the end, all I can do is prepare with the evil alliance. She felt self-loathing at the reality that she couldn't lend her strength. But she couldn't just be disheartened by this. Even if Mok Jaeungun succeeded in killing Mok Gon's main body, the leader of secret society, there was no guarantee that another great calamity wouldn't occur, and it was also hard to rashly guarantee success. Therefore, it was right to make even a little preparation. She turned the pages to study the secret manual. But then, Tata. At that moment the campfire flames suddenly flared up, sparks flying in all directions before the fire rapidly died down. Her eyes shook at this sudden, strange omen. What's this? It was a kind of sixth sense. In the dying flames she could only think of one person. Young Master Mok? It happened so suddenly without any chance to avoid it. As Mok Jung-un was flying at an incredible speed, a beam of light with tremendous brightness surged up from the ground and enveloped him. Paewia. Unable to open his eyes properly due to the blinding light, Mok Jung-un tried to secure his vision by opening his eye power. As his eye power opened, the dazzling light faded and he gradually began to see what was in front of him. At that moment Mok Jung-un sensed a familiar energy in this blinding beam of light enveloping him. This was that thing from back then? The feeling of the entire space becoming dull as if submerged in a heavy liquid. As if time itself had stopped, his entire body was moving very slowly. This was undoubtedly the same technique that Mok Gon's avatar, who had taken Na Yulriang's body in the Heaven and Earth Society, had used. Mok Jung-un's eyes sharpened. Had he prepared this in advance, anticipating his arrival? Just then a voice was heard. You arrived earlier than expected. Incarnate. Time was flowing so slowly that Mok Jung-un couldn't turn his eyeballs, but he could guess who the owner of this voice was. Mok Gon. But something felt off. The manner of speaking was certainly similar, but it wasn't the same voice he had heard when following his thoughts. As he was wondering about this, someone flew in front of Mok Jung-un's eyes with their hands behind their back. When he saw that face, Mok Jung-un's pupils slowly contracted. This was because it was an old man whose face was so covered in wrinkles that only his black pupils were visible, with no whites showing. Of course, even so, the atmosphere was far from ordinary. The third eye on his forehead staring directly at Mok Jung-un, and the smile tinged with madness, along with the tremendous aura flowing from him, were all extraordinary. An avatar. Mok Jung-un felt a chill inside. It was clearly powerful, but this wasn't the main body in front of him. So this was the reason why the location of the main body had been revealed so easily? This was a prepared trap. The old man, presumed to be Mok Gon's avatar, opened his mouth. How do you find the Supreme Void Sealing Reversal Technique? Supreme Void Sealing Reversal Technique. 1. This revealed something. Did this mean that the technique used to trap him in the Heaven and Earth Society back then wasn't complete? Meanwhile he was approaching closer. Mok Jung-un, thinking that escaping should take priority over understanding the nature of the technique, tried to summon his supreme strength. However, the energy wouldn't gather easily. As if he had anticipated this, Mok Gon's avatar sneered and said, I prepared this especially for you. It will be completely different from last time. The completed Supreme Void Sealing Reversal Technique. This was an ancient forbidden technique that required sacrificing the lives of beings possessing 1,000 yin energies and 1,000 yang energies. Mok Gon had once used this technique to seal the restraining badger, one of the 6 demons, the assassin king of the sea. It required many sacrifices and was tricky as both yin and yang energies needed to be at their peak, but it was the only technique that could completely trap Incarnate, so he had been waiting for this moment. Then shall we retrieve what's mine from you? Mok Gon's avatar slowly reached out his hand towards Mok Jung-un. He seemed to have already noticed that the wooden doll in Mok Jung-un's chest contained Chong Ryung. But at that very moment, a fierce light flickered in Mok Jung-un's eyes as he glared at Mok Gon's avatar. Then, Kek. At that instant Mok Gon's avatar spat out black blood and clutched at his heart. He was so shocked that he glared at Mok Jung-un with trembling eyes. This bastard, could it be? Chapter 465. The Beginning of a Calamity, 2. The Supreme Void Sealing Reversal Technique, an ancient forbidden technique. This was a technique that required sacrificing the lives of beings possessing 1,000 yin energies and 1,000 yang energies, along with thousands of intricate formations. Not only was the preparation process for this technique so demanding, but it was also a method that fundamentally put the practitioner's life on the line, which is why it had long since disappeared. Mok Gon had once easily sealed the restraining badger, one of the 6 demons, the assassin king of the sea, using this technique. Although it required many sacrifices, the terrifying aspect of this technique was that once someone was trapped, They absolutely could not escape without a complex unsealing technique. This would be true even for incarnate. After all, this technique was created to trap non-human beings. However, something completely unexpected happened. The moment he met the sharp light in Mok Jaeongun's eyes, Mok Gon's avatar felt a pain as if his heart was being stabbed by a knife. The eyes of Mok Gon's avatar shook wildly. Once trapped in the supreme void sealing reversal technique, he should have been in a state where he absolutely could not move. But in that state, there was only one thing that could inflict a wound on his heart as if stabbing it with a sword. Impossible. The sword of the mind. The sword of the mind. It's also called the sword intent. They say that in the realm of swordsmanship, the highest state is the invisible sword, where even true chi becomes a sword. However, as always, there is a higher level above the highest. It was said that if one reached a state of harmony with nature beyond the boundary of life and death, human will would transcend its limits, and one could wield a sword with thought alone. Can't be. No matter how much his rate of growth transcended human limits, this bastard hadn't crossed beyond the realm of life and death. The supreme sword is just. Suddenly the eyes of Mok Gon's avatar widened. This bastard wasn't following the path of immortals or harmonizing with nature, but had created his own path. That was the supreme sword and the path of will. Gulp. His mouth went dry and he swallowed hard. He's truly a monstrous bastard. Did he master the supreme sword, which maximizes one's own capabilities through will alone, and then even approach the sword of the mind by surpassing that limit? But then the pain of his heart being stabbed struck again. Pukshin. Pat. Feeling that this wouldn't do, Mok Gon's avatar distanced himself from Mok Jaeongun. As he increased the distance, the throbbing pain in his heart subsided, and he could feel the wounded area regenerating. Because of this, he realized one thing. It's not yet perfect. If it were truly the legendary sword intent, the sword energy that had penetrated his heart would have gone beyond intense pain to make his mind hazy, and the sword energy would have spread throughout his entire body, making it impossible to move. However, now it only resulted in pain. Of course, the pain was not insignificant, which is why he had to retreat. Damn it. Mok Gon's avatar was dumbfounded. When he couldn't move his body, this bastard had stepped into a realm beyond his current limits. How could such a person exist? Even he, who had changed bodies countless times and made the martial arts of numerous great masters his own, hadn't been able to approach. Kook. Feeling a piercing pain in his chest, Mok Gon's avatar distanced himself even further. It was infuriating that even an incomplete sword of the mind could cause such a troublesome situation. The goal was to retrieve Ryu Sowol's soul after sealing him with the supreme void sealing reversal technique. And he had intended to make him feel unparalleled pain, but at this rate, it was difficult to even approach him. He had managed to trap him, but now he was in a situation where he couldn't do anything. What should I do? If it were ordinary pain, he could forcibly endure it and approach. But the pain caused by the sword of the mind couldn't be endured even with such willpower, so he had no choice but to keep his distance. In fact, he could have pushed himself since this was just an avatar. However, he was reluctant to do so recklessly because if that bastard truly surpassed expectations and even completed the sword of the mind in this process, it would create an even more troublesome situation. You continue to block my path until the end. Flinch. At that moment, the gaze of Mok Gon's avatar, who had been speaking, turned away from Mok Jaeongun to somewhere else. It was outside the supreme void sealing reversal technique. Outside, Chong Ryong, who he had thought would be inside Mok Jaeongun's bosom, was in her manifested form, extending her index finger towards the supreme void sealing reversal technique. It seemed she had used the void suppression from the 8 thought-shattering techniques. Even though it was a technique from the 8 thought-shattering techniques, called the Supreme Secret Manual, the Supreme Void Sealing Reversal Technique was an ancient forbidden technique that cut off space itself, so the void suppression didn't work. However, thanks to using the void suppression, he realized that she was outside, not in here. The corners of Mok Gon's avatar's mouth stretched into a grin. He had thought that monstrous bastard would become a variable and hinder his retrieval of the Hun, but to think such luck would occur here. Mok Gon moved his body towards where Chong Ryong was. Seeing this, Mok Jaeongun visualized stabbing Mok Gon's avatar with a sword using his strong will to stop him. However, once the distance was increased, it no longer affected Mok Gon. At this, Mok Jaeyoung mentally shouted to Chong Ryong. Chong Ryong, telling her to run away and leave him behind. But because the connection as a spirit servant had been severed, Mok Jaeyoung's thoughts couldn't be transmitted to her. Mortal. Chong Ryong was also anxious watching Mok Jaeyoung like this. In the split second when the beam of light enveloped him, Mok Jaeyoung had thrown the wooden doll, allowing her to escape from it. However, in this unfortunate situation where he himself couldn't escape, her only thought was to somehow rescue Mok Jaeyoung. So she had used the void suppression, but it didn't work. What should I do? She had thought that if she could affect the space, she might be able to create a crack in this enormous formation. But if even this didn't work, how could she save the mortal? As she was thinking this, she saw the three-eyed old man, presumed to be Mok Gon's avatar, approaching where she was. Yuduk. Chong Ryong glared at him as he approached, raising a vengeful thought filled with killing intent. The surroundings began to turn blood-red. However, as she hadn't fully recovered her spirit power yet, she couldn't unleash her ghost intent domain. Mok Gon's avatar spoke to her in this state. Soul. Give up now. Once trapped in the supreme void sealing reversal technique, he can never escape. Release the mortal immediately. You surely know that such a demand won't work. Just how far will your madness go? If you return to my side, I won't cause you any more pain. Ah, of course, that one is a separate matter. Mok Gon's avatar sneered, pointing his thumb at Mok Jaeyoung. Chong Ryong glared at him and said, You can never have me. No, soon I will. With those words, Mok Gon's avatar lightly flicked his finger. Then, in the direction he had flicked his finger, something like an illusion began to appear. Chong Ryong's expression hardened as she saw something reflected in the illusion. This was because in the illusion she could see countless, almost tens of thousands of people moving in formation. Among them, numerous flags could be seen. Wudong sect, Beggar sect, Huashan sect, Amei sect, Zhongnan sect, Kongtong sect, Yensong sect, Qingqing sect, Murong family, Zhuge family, Huangfu family, Jinzhouyan family. In addition, flags of hundreds of small and medium-sized sects could be seen. And at the very front, large flags were fluttering. Righteous Alliance. These were the Righteous Alliance, a coalition of orthodox martial arts sects. What on earth? What on earth is this? Why are so many martial artists of the Righteous Alliance moving in such formation? As she was puzzled by this, Mok Gon's avatar laughed and said, Did you think I had only been working on the Heaven and Earth Society for all this time? The human heart is less sturdy than you might think. It only takes a little manipulation for them to fall to desire or be consumed by madness in an instant. What are you trying to do? They are currently marching south. South? To defeat the new Heaven and Earth Society led by the heavenly demon who will harm the martial arts world and to uphold justice. At these words, Chong Ryong spoke as if dumbfounded. Harm to the martial arts world? What on earth have you schemed? There's no need to scheme. Rather, he brought this upon himself. Not only did he single-handedly subdue the 108 Arhat formation of Shaolin and force the Sichuan Tang clan into seclusion, but he even took control of the spiritual sword sanctuary manor led by one of the seven heavens. Unless they're fools, do you think the Righteous Alliance would just stand by and watch? Ah, of course, since these fools go on about justice and righteousness, I merely provided a little catalyst. Chong Ryong couldn't contain her anger at his words. Indeed, it was hard to see him as Bai Yonghian anymore. While his madness towards her had continued for a long time, even for him who had been the head of Heaven Vane, the Heaven and Earth Society was the foundation and a long-held dream. The fact that he was trying to destroy such a place through the dark side showed that he had completely strayed from the being she once knew. All that's left in you is madness and destruction. At her words, Mok Gon's avatar spoke as if he didn't care at all. Didn't I tell you? All of this is your own doing. Your own doing. You really have gone mad. It doesn't matter how you see it. Soon we'll return to how things were before. Mok Gon's avatar. No, Mok Gon was already certain of everything. This probably wasn't all he had prepared. Moving the Righteous Alliance was to shake up the newly fortified Heaven and Earth Society after all his subordinates had disappeared. If in that state the true catastrophe he intended were to unfold. Chong Ryong's eyes shook. She now understood his true intentions. Your main body is also heading towards the Heaven and Earth Society, isn't it? At her words, Mok Gon's avatar raised the corner of his mouth sinisterly, as if to say she was correct. Seeing this, she felt as if her non-existent heart was pounding. Hook. Chong Ryong bit her lip hard. This madman was not only prepared to obtain her but also to thoroughly ravage the world. Zik. Chong Ryong turned her gaze to look into Mok Jae-un's eyes. Mortal. In the frozen space, Mok Jae-un's eyes were still alive. That's why even he, despite setting such an enormous trap, couldn't do anything about this guy. Chong Ryong looked at Mok Jae-un and said in her heart, "I'll trust you." Pat. Believing that they shared the same intention, as soon as Chong Ryong steeled her resolve in her heart, she launched her body in the opposite direction. The direction she was heading was southeast, where the Heaven and Earth Society was located. Watching her, Mok Gon sneered. "Do you think I'll let you escape?" Zik. Although most of his energy was tied to the Supreme Void Sealing Reversal technique, to the point where the practitioner had to put his own life on the line, and even he couldn't escape from inside, he could still do this much. Zik. Mok Gon grasped a sword intent and extended it towards Chong Ryong. At that moment, an incredibly transparent formless sword appeared in the air and rushed towards her at tremendous speed. Chong Ryong twisted her body and swung her pipe. Then a mist of blood appeared in the air, creating a whirlwind that tried to block the incoming formless sword like a shield. However, as Chong Ryong's spirit power had not yet fully recovered, her strength was not complete. The formless sword instantly pierced through the blood whirlwind and reached within 6 jang of Chong Ryong. Got her. Mok Gon smiled with satisfaction. But at that very moment, quack-quack-quang, several explosions occurred in the air and something blocked the formless sword. The power of the explosions was so strong that even the formless sword couldn't easily penetrate it, and meanwhile Chong Ryong was gradually moving further away. Oh no! Then through the explosions someone with half-white hair fluttering appeared. Seeing this, Mok Gon's eyes filled with rage. That someone was none other than Chun Chu, the highest-ranking member of Secret Society. "How dare you?" "Yeah, I dare to interfere with you, you fucking parasite-eyed bastard."